I'm Tom Healey, sports editor of the Rutland Herald, and I have as my guest today on Healey's Comet, WSYB sports director Jack Healey, 10-time Vermont state winner of the Sports Writer of the Year Award. And Jack, the last time that we were here was just about, I think, to the day, a year ago. We were talking about the Shrine game, for one thing, which is a lot sooner than we think it is. I think it's coming right up. Camp will be starting later this month. And we were talking about, and I remember it distinctly, the impact that we thought quarterback Sean Keenan and Mount Anthony receiver Ryan Lacasse, that combination and its impact would have on the game. Of course, our conversation was very prophetic because they did hook up for and had a great game, passing and catching. Great Shrine game, Vermont losing again, but 27-21, outstanding game that Vermont could have won. Keenan, I don't know if you know anything about this, and I don't have it officially, but the word is, I guess, he's headed for Williams, I believe. Is that what you hear?
No, I didn't know that.
Okay,
I knew he went to Exeter, of course.
Right, last year, exactly. And anyway,
scoop me again,
Tom. Coming right up.
Son of a gun.
Coming right up.
Keeps on doing it, even on TV.
What about this year's Shrine game?
Well, I'm looking forward to it. You and I are the same, and of course, you refresh my memory about that conversation, so I guess I've been on the show 3 times, and this is my 3rd time, and I always get the feeling Vermont has a shot at that game every year.
I do too, and maybe more so this year because I know head coach Brian Coombs from Fairhaven feels very good about the size factor this year, that they often don't match up well with New Hampshire in the trenches, and this year they do. Average, what, 240, 245 along the line? It's a big high school team.
Sure,
so,
and I think nowadays, even in high school, you have to be that big. And the question is quickness. I've seen in the past, and you have too, where we've talked about Vermont matching up well, or if Vermont is not quite as heavy as New Hampshire might be in the line, well, they got to be quicker. And we found out that isn't the case in many of the years too.
Right.
But I think we have reason for optimism, as we do every year. As you know, on the average, Vermont wins that game once every 10 years or so, and we're just about getting to the time that we should be winning that game again. But there's no reason to believe that Vermont shouldn't compete in that every year. They've changed the rules to help out Vermont. We've discussed that many times before. I think that in the case, if we want to compare it to some of the other all-star games, Vermont's got a long way to go as far as the boys are concerned in basketball.
Oh, yes.
The girls seem to compete real well with New Hampshire in all the sports.
Yep.
And the boys have trouble, except for the Shrine game, where I think going in every year you have a legitimate shot to win. You kind of wonder about maybe some of the other sports. I know in baseball they win maybe one game. I think they've done pretty well in baseball and soccer.
Done pretty well in baseball.
But I think basketball is the sport that we're...
Yeah, basketball, there have been a couple blowouts recently in favor of the New Hampshire boys. As I mentioned, last year we were focusing a lot on Mount St. Joseph Academy quarterback Sean Keenan. This year the quarterbacks are kind of diverse styles. You got the more drop back, good throwing quarterback from Hartford and Ryan McCarthy, and the option quarterback from Woodstock and Vern Doyle. So they could give Vermont could give a different look there, depending who's running the team. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. I saw McCarthy 2 or 3 times last year. I didn't see Doyle at all. I know he was a pretty good basketball player. I saw him play basketball, so I think he's got the athletic skills. That should be interesting.
He's got the athletic skills, and I think teaching that type of the wing tee and the option and so forth, probably few people do it any better than Jim McLaughlin. So I understand he's got the fundamentals and the understanding and the grasp if they decide to run plays in that type of direction. So it should be. I like their chances this year. I really do. I know we always say that, and we come back disappointed more often than not. But when you look at it, when you look at the series, it's a big disparity in who wins the games, and yet even the L's for Vermont, the 27-21 last year. Year before wasn't too good, but the year before that, the Dan Laughlin year, a game everyone feels Vermont had the better team, should have won. So those two of those 3 were very, very close, and were there for Vermont to take games they could have won.
I think we've talked about this before, too, that New Hampshire, for the most part, 2 out of every 4 years, let's say, maybe 3 out of 4, will have a super team in the sense that they have guys that are going on to Notre Dame or whatever the case might be.
Exactly.
That was the case 7 or 8 years ago. We all
Right.
felt that year that Coach Laughlin coached the Vermont team was a down, quote-unquote, year for New Hampshire. And in New Hampshire's down years, quote-unquote, and I want to emphasize putting that in quotes, those are the years where Vermont has the legitimate shot. The thing is, we don't know from one year to the next whether New Hampshire is, at least I don't, until the game starts,
And in
whether
fact,
that's a down year for New Hampshire, regardless of how many kids they have going to major
You know when that was
colleges.
most true? The year that Joel Perry was the
Exactly.
quarterback. We had other great players on that team besides Joel. That was a great Vermont team. We all got caught up in that. Come to find out, it was one of the New Hampshire coaching staff that year said it was one of the best teams they ever had, and that was lost on us and all of our hype for Vermont. So
I don't think you really know until the game starts.
Right.
And then after the game, you say, boy, that's one of the best New Hampshire teams I've ever seen, or one of the best Vermont teams we've ever seen. And so we have to, it has to be those years in where New Hampshire might not have the super athletes, and you don't know from one year to the next. Are the years for Vermont to win.
Right.
As we said before, though, we always expect Vermont to go into a game. Plus, the thing I've liked about the last couple of years, even the Coach Laughlin year that was close, and Vermont should have and could have and all that stuff, is pulling out all the stops. And I know
isn't that great? They're doing it now.
I think
They
that's
are
great.
doing it now. They're
Rather
not
than
playing
try
not
to
to
play it
lose.
close.
Right.
Play not to lose, or at
Right,
least play to
exactly.
make it close. I think somebody quoted, I forgot the coach, I don't want to bring it up because in case I forget which guy it was, but, well, at least I was closer. At least we got more first downs than so-and-so did the year before. And I found that that's been the case some years. Play, not necessarily play not to lose, but almost expecting to lose, but let's keep it close and make it entertaining.
Exactly.
Whereas I think that if you pull out all the stops and try to win, for example, last year, not necessarily be a big offensive passing show,
Right.
but don't worry about making mistakes. I mean, mistakes are a big part of this game, as we all know, and they generally are every year, and probably will be this year. There's interceptions, but New Hampshire made some mistakes last year, too, that might have kept the game a little bit closer than it might have been.
Right.
But at least, I think that if you pull out all the stops to win, you do risk maybe being blown out. But so be it.
I'd rather go that way.
Yeah, I'd
You're
rather
right.
go that way
You're
myself.
right.
I'm not a
You're
coach of the game, but, hey, it's an entertainment game,
You're
let's
right.
face it. And
You're right.
let's
And
entertain.
you're right about New Hampshire having the D1 players through the years.
Sure.
Of course, standing out immediately, Ryan Mahalko from Pinkerton, who went to Notre Dame.
That's
and
right.
did get some playing time in South Bend, and also his backfield teammate Joe Segretti, who went to Holy Cross, won AA, of course.
Now, we're
And,
talking maybe almost 10 years ago now, right?
Yeah, we are, but then, of course, just
That
a
was the
couple
year
years
that
ago-
Vermont lost in the last seconds. Was
That's
that
right.
not the same
I
year?
think
So,
that was.
so there's an example.
Yep.
You were talked about one guy going to Notre Dame, the other one, I believe, going to Holy Cross,
Holy
right?
Cross, and
once again.
rewriting the record book at Holy Cross.
And so that was a year where we heard all the hype. This is one of New Hampshire's great teams, and yet
That was
Vermont,
Don Hubert's year.
Yes, it was.
And it was a great
And it
game.
went right to, and I
was a
might
great
add
game.
that was one of the few games in the last 10, 15 years that I've missed. I missed that game, but I did hear it on the radio, and obviously it went to the last last play of the game, as we all remember, but yet going into the game, everybody looked, that's what we were talking about before. You never know what kind of a team New Hampshire might be. That was supposed to be a superb New Hampshire team. You mentioned the two guys going on to Division I football after that, especially Notre Dame, and yet Vermont almost pulled that out.
Exactly.
Then the next year was the last year, of course, Vermont won the game. And so
88.
in 88.
Yep.
So actually
Bruce
Vermont had a real legitimate shot of winning 2 in a row. They won in 88 and lost in the final play of 87.
Yeah, and that brings me to another point, Jack. Don't get me fired up about this now, but because it won't take much, but getting the Vermont Shrine Camp back on Vermont soil. I mean, I think for the other Twin State games, field hockey, soccer, baseball, those kind of sports lend themselves more to the teams training at the same site. I think football, you need different camps. If you have different camps, why wouldn't one be in its own state, the other in its own state? Of course, right now, they both train at Plymouth State College, a wonderful facility and wonderful people who run a class camp, but I really would love to see the Vermont camp return to Vermont. And the reason you reminded me of it, you brought up the Don Hubert year. Their camp that year was at Green Mountain College And you can ask Chucky Clarino, because he about lived over there that year. He was over there every single day. That was a great camp, one of the best organized camps. One reason they did have such a great chance to win that game, and that was at a school in Vermont that's not even a football school, and it was a wonderful camp. And I really think that that underscores our wish to have the camp return to Vermont. And as a maybe not quite as important, well, it is important because the Shrine Game deserves and needs, I think, all the exposure it can get and the media attention. If it was in Northfield or elsewhere in Vermont again, I think you would have a lot more pregame hype. All of the state's 11 daily newspapers and the 3 or 4 radio stations that are left that really do give attention to local sports would be there often. You know, somebody would be there every day, and I just think that that's something they should work toward.
Well, I agree with that, and I remember, of course, there was an article about the Shrine Game every day when the camp was here at Green Mountain College, and some people would look back and say, well, at Norwich, and I don't know what the situation is in the future, whether it ever will come back to Norwich or not.
Although they do want it.
The publicity,
it
would be easier for a lot of, it'd be easier than Plymouth State to go to Norwich, and
yes.
would be great if it were
it's
here.
Half the time.
And especially since every year when,
2 hours.
among Fairhaven and Pulteney and MSJ and Rutland, and hopefully in the future Mill River, especially now that they're in Division 3, and even Otter Valley getting the 8-man football now.
Yep.
In the very near future. There's so much interest in the Shrine Game, in my opinion, in this area because we have so many players every year.
We say this every year, but isn't it true?
Yeah.
When a Rutland or MSJ player or Fairhaven is introduced, it comes through the goalpost at Memorial Field, the huge cheer that emanates from the stands is louder than it is for any other players.
Exactly. So it would be great to have it in the Rutland area because I think a lot of people would go to the camp itself. And as a matter of fact, there were rumors a couple of years ago about putting it at Rutland High, having the kids stay overnight at St. Joe's,
that was
right?
5 or 6 years ago. You and Michigan Braves and myself were talking about having it in Rutland. It had been in Rutland once, Title Flight's year. Okay. The year Ollie Dunlap played, they had bunks in the gymnasium at Rutland High School. But the College of St. Joe's dorms and the facilities with St. Peter's Field and Alumni Field and Flights Field, beautiful. I mean, you know, you could have a shuttle bus system. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The media attention that they would receive.
For 1 week, you can have the practice at Alumni Field. St. Peter's Field might be a problem because of Legion baseball.
Right.
But yet, Flights Field and Alumni Field for 1 week at Alumni Field. I mean, the field isn't going to get chewed up in 1 or 10 days in the summertime anyway at Alumni Field. I think it would be a great idea, and I think that would even hype the game better. And I know that goes to the fact that because, and you've mentioned it in columns, and I've mentioned it many times too, what a great job the Shrine Committee does on publicizing the game, and because they do such a good job, the media is more apt to do an even better job because
public relations
they run the wave. Yeah, it's a machine. You mentioned in a column a week or two ago. It's the number 3 game in the country of this type, behind East-West Shrine College and the Shrine Game of the Carolinas. You have the article about how it got started and so forth.
Ted Lewis.
Ted Lewis. And so here, because I want to make mention of this, and I know I've said it on the air and you've said it in columns too, we have the number 3 all-star game of this type in the whole country in our own state here, and we have several other all-star games, Vermont and New Hampshire, whether it be baseball, lacrosse, field hockey, soccer, what have you, and for some reason, and we're going to make a couple of exceptions here in a second, they don't. It'd be one thing if they all did the same thing, but here we are, we have number 3 in the country, and they don't follow the lead of that. It just amazes me. I just can't believe it. I can't believe it. Now, I want to, you mentioned Stan Patch, Lions, the soccer, and that's done a pretty good job over the years.
Yes, it has.
And also, I might add that even though it was late, I did get some stuff on the lacrosse game. Unfortunately, it was only a couple of days before the game itself. But it's not a question of whether the Shrine Football Committee has a paid staff. They have one, I believe, full-time employee who's a secretary. And they give you stuff all the time and remind you of who's in the game and so forth. For example, the field hockey game. And both you and I had said that we thought it was the biggest kept secret. Now, after the field hockey season last year, and we knew about a few of the Rutland kids that were on the team, and we knew at that time, this is back in November, mind you, 7, 8, 9 months before the All-Star game. We knew it was coming, but we didn't know, or at least I didn't know when it was, number 1. Number 2, even though I knew of one or two of the players off the top of my head, I didn't know of all the players from the Rutland area,
Right.
even though we publicized it at one time 7 or 8 months ago.
Right,
it would have been nice to go back, but I didn't.
month for the
I mean,
game,
that
you
might
think
be
the
my fault
publicity
for
will
not
start
keeping
heating
the
up again,
record.
yeah.
Not keeping the record on it. But in my opinion, as my cohort in the morning on WSYB, Brian Collmore, said when we've talked about the Make-A-Wish Foundation game with
Right.
hockey, this is not an investigative reporting type of thing. This is something you should be
Exactly.
They ought to be reminding the media all the time of that
Yeah.
game coming up. Now, as I said, I could have gone back if I kept records on the Rutland High girls that were on the field hockey team. Yet on the other hand, they could at least approach the game, remind us of who's on the team and so forth. For example, the Shrine football people will always tell us about replacement. Matter of fact, we talked
Right.
about there was a youngster from Fairhaven that got replaced by a youngster from Middlebury recently.
Exactly.
They tell us about that.
Yep.
And I must get the roster 10 or 15 different times,
Oh,
I
sure.
think. They
Yeah.
they send me the roster to remind us who's in the game all the
Yep.
time. And I believe that that's their job. Now, obviously, we have the temple here in Rutland, the Shrine Temple,
Right.
and that has something to do. We have 2 temples in Vermont and one in New Hampshire and so
Right.
forth. And I know that for Alhambra, there's nobody here in the state of Vermont. But yet, you say it, we say it time after time, year after year, whether it be baseball or the basketball. Why don't they tell us? And I, quite frankly, if it were not for the fact that I've seen it in the paper, I would know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't get the stuff. I did get soccer, I want to repeat, obviously the football, and I did get something on the lacrosse. Other than that, I have never, I can't say never, but at least most of the time have not gotten anything on the baseball game or any of the other Vermont, New Hampshire things, let alone who's on the team.
Right.
And we're not there for investigative reporting. We should be told about that. I know we wanted to touch upon that a little bit here in this. And however, I've said this to you privately. I do believe radio stations nowadays can take some of the blame for that. I have to think, and this is only a theory, because you had already mentioned there are only a few radio stations left in the state that even bothers with anything like this, that they might have done it years ago. I don't remember, but may have got discouraged because radio stations just don't publicize it anyway, whether they get the stuff or not.
Right.
In this influx of FM playing our best, our favorite music type of thing that doesn't do that type of stuff, they might be discouraged, but they ought to be reminded here that there are some stations that indeed still do that.
Right.
And no put down on FMs, because FMs can do the same thing, but it's just that feeling of the fact that they probably say, well, why bother sending them a press release? They don't use it. I mean, I get press releases about obscure bike tours up in Northeast Kingdom and
Right,
so forth that I
right.
don't use. I do get a lot of press releases about things like that, and I can see how people that run those are maybe discouraged a little bit. But, for example, I know you had Laura Whitten on from the
Right.
Vermont Futures Tour.
Futures Tour, yep.
And she sends me stuff all the time.
Right.
A few of which we've used, but we haven't used it every single time. The same with the Shrine football thing. We don't use every press release, but
Right.
she's reminding me when it is, and we do have a commercial going and,
Yep.
and so forth. And I think, back to my original statement, I think some of them might get discouraged. So in that respect, it's the radio station's fault. But in general, you'd think they do a better job in some of these all-star games. And if we can take it further, I know as we speak here, recording the show, the Vermont Amateur Golf Tournament, there's an example. Unless I saw it in the paper, nobody sent me anything from it.
Right.
Same with the Pierce Tournament, the member guest. I've had information from the country club. I don't have. I have one. There's one guy at WSYB basically that does sports. You can't go to every event, but there's no reason why people can't. I've gone to some member guest tournaments. I've gone to some Pierce tournaments. But except for the fact that I read in the paper, I don't know. I don't get any press release from the country club telling me when it is. After
Right.
being here for many years, I know that one's in August and
Yep.
about Legion baseball time, and the other one I believe is in June. But
Right.
that's just an example.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get off the tangent on your show here.
Oh, no, I think that's very, I think that the bottom line is if you're in an organization, whether it's the
Yeah.
Lions or the Shrine or a country club, that, your feeling ought to be, if you're not excited about it, how do you expect other people to be?
Yeah, as you know, you probably get tons of press releases. You're not going to use every single one of them.
Right.
I think the press releases you get for the Shrine game is a natural for newspaper, where you put in little
Right.
tidbits and so forth. And
Yeah.
you can only say on radio, outside of the fact of the final week before the game, you can only say so much about tickets are available at various outlets and so forth. I like the way you do it, not blowing smoke your way, and you're doing it with the soccer, which is great, because undoubtedly Stan Patch must have given you the information.
Correct.
Now, is that great or what, with a picture? I'm talking about the boys and girls, the pictures of the kids every day, and I know you do the same thing with the Shrine kids with a little synopsis of at least the local kids. I don't know if you do it for everybody, or
well, we are doing it for kids.
Well, of course, you're a regional regional newspaper.
Whether they're from Essex or
that's
North
good.
Country or what. Well,
Sure.
I guess it is. I kind of wish there were more locals in soccer, and I think that will change.
I think you're doing it for soccer, but in the for the Shrine football, do you do everybody? You do everything. Okay. And that's a great idea. That's what it's. That's what it's all about. I mentioned
the local kids first in case we run out of time.
I remember how gun-ho you are about, you had mentioned in your column too about the Shrine, when the coaches are announced, there's a banquet over at in Leb or White River, and also when the team is announced, and I know you like to go, and I know Channel 15 has done the interviews and so forth. I saw Brian Coombs, the coach, shortly before, I believe, the kids banquet over there, and I generally don't go to that. I told Brian, this is the other way. This is how gun-ho the Shrine football, and I know you go to all of them, how gun-ho the Shrine football committee is. They have the as I mentioned, the coaches and the kids and so forth. And I said to Brian, I said, boy, I got plenty of time to give this publicity. The game is still at this time 5 or 6 months to go, but don't worry, when the time comes, we'll be there, and that's why we do it. But that's a perfect newspaper thing, and it just shows you how they do it. And you mentioned Jim McLaughlin, by the way, who had a marvelous speech. I know it was on Channel 15, and that's great for Channel 15 and for the newspapers. And I kind of laughed with Coach Coombs about it, because it was like it was going the other way, saying, "Boy, okay, we know already it's coming up." But that's the way they do it. And they do a lovely job. I just marvel at the job they do.
Yeah, no question about
it. And I don't understand why the others don't take heed of that. And I don't want to. And as I said before, I got a lovely note personally from Stanley Patch, Stan Patch, about the soccer, and it was a person from Randolph that sent me I don't remember his name offhand, but a person from Randolph, I believe a dentist or a regular doctor up in Randolph, that sent me the stuff on the lacrosse, which I thought was great.
Of course, soccer is pretty good.
Yep.
Baseball, softball, and lacrosse have the time.
I know you mentioned that. That's part of it. I understand.
They don't have a lot of time.
But at least the press release about who's
played in the fall.
That's right.
They named the team a long time ago. It's
in
like hit or miss.
basketball,
they send a release in, and if you print it, fine. If you don't print it, they don't say follow up. It's just I don't know. I don't.
In basketball, that's plenty of time. I mean, I always have to find out. For example, in the football one, we all know it's a small town. We might not know everybody that's named to the Shrine team, but you hear through the grapevine who's on. And I always have to find out through the grapevine who's on the Alhambra, or if anybody. And I knew about as I mentioned earlier, I knew about the field hockey kids back at the time. I think the coach might have told us, or you find out who it is by rumor or what have you, but we were never reminded about it. And grant you had mentioned in your column too, they don't have a lot of time for baseball, but nevertheless, they have a week or two, but that doesn't mean that, and I understand that part of it, baseball and softball, but also it doesn't have anything to do with the basketball that ends up. They might not have enough time to publicize it from the time school closes until the time of the game, I grant you that, but they certainly have a lot of time between the end of the basketball season and the game itself. And getting back to softball, we have the North-South game. Nobody sent, I knew that, okay, they go off to the North-South game. I knew about some of the players that were on the Southern team. They go off to the tryouts. They say they'll be released. I never got anything. Nobody told me who was on the Vermont softball team.
And I just think that that North-South softball game is a wonderful thing, because you go over and you see some good softball, and you see all Vermonters, you know. Every team. I mean,
sure.
Like the 36 players there, and they're all from Vermont, and they're all good. I think that's a great event.
Oh, sure,
of course,
I do too.
Rutland Sarah Wormwood had herself a night that nobody will ever forget.
And I might add, when Lynn Hire,
Del Bianco Hire.
Lynn Del Bianco Hire was in charge of that, or had a lot to do with that. She was the coach at Colchester. She did give me information on the North-South game, and of course, I think the first year they had it was across the street from the house. So I got to say that Lynn's done an excellent job.
She has.
The thing is, since that time, I know it's been a couple of years since she had something to do with it. I know she's called us up on the air about it and so forth, but.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, you had as a guest on your radio show the other night, Vic Regenbaugh,
Yes.
the coach of the now three-time state champion Proctor High School baseball team. And I thought he was a little evasive on one question that you and I have always talked about, and that is the number of divisions
Yeah.
in the state. The feeling that maybe 4 is too many and it dilutes the specialness of the state championship. In fact, Terry Champagne, who was a sub-varsity coach in a couple sports in Proctor, and I were just talking about this the other day, and he agreed with me. State championship should be difficult, should be hard to get, should be special when you do get it. I know you asked Vic about if he thought 4 divisions was too many, and what he kind of said, his answer didn't really answer it. He said, well, we're going to be Division III in a couple of years
Yeah.
anyway. That was based on his enrollment projections.
Yeah.
But
It wasn't really so much enrollment. I remember that question. It's not so much enrollment. We all know Proctor doesn't have a lot of
No.
boys in the school.
No,
It was
fewer than it used to.
I think I meant it from the point of view that you've already won 3 Division
Right,
IV
I see what you're saying.
championships.
Right.
And what else can you do except win another one? I
Yeah.
equate this to Hartford winning all those Division II football championships.
and then moving up.
Yeah, and then moving up.
Right.
And I know that this was in part of that interview the other night, too. We talked about the fact that teams around here in Division IV, whether it be Proctor or West Rutland, whether you're talking about baseball or basketball, play up a lot.
Right.
And
Sure.
they shouldn't be penalized, and I understand
And
that
I understand
part.
Vic's answer on
Yeah.
that one.
As far as the
That's
open
why the open
format is
tournament
concerned,
is probably good
That's
and
the
fair.
number
because-
one plus
right.
thing for the open tournament.
Yeah.
I think we've discussed many times that we're basically, all of us in the media here are against it, but that is the one plus for it,
Yeah.
I might add. Yeah, you're right. I think, and Vic's tuned in here on this particular show, I think he did evade that just a bit because I think that there probably are too many divisions. And maybe you can say more so in baseball than you can in basketball. So much, well, he almost answered it in a way without
Right.
knowing it by Proctor was under 500. Grant you, they play up a lot, but yet they got a bye to the quarterfinals. Now it's got, and they did. I know he wanted to make the point that they would have qualified for the playoffs even on the 40% thing back, and I understand that, but there's something about not having enough teams where you get buys to the quarters. In some cases, buys to the semis.
Right, exactly.
And if you moved them up, we're only talking about, what, 8 or 9, 10 schools here, aren't we?
Right.
Why not throw them in with Division III?
Right. I don't want to switch gears here too quickly, but we
okay,
did
I
get
know.
the 2-minute warning
Okay.
from cameraman Tom Leypoldt, and I did want to bring up an exciting new feature coming soon to Channel 15. Jack Healey and Mark Williams will have a show on College of St. Joseph women's basketball. Mark, of course, the CSJ women's coach, and I understand you will have, it'll kind of be probably like along the same format of people who've seen the college coaching shows on TV, like
Sure.
the Lou Holtz show and so forth. You'll bring players on from time to time.
Yeah, we're hoping to do that. We're hoping to have
very
clips.
exciting.
I know they take clips of the home games. We haven't discussed what we're going to call it as yet. We're still working on that, number one.
How about Saints Alive?
Hey, that's a good one. and I don't know if it's going to be every week or every other week. I know Mark probably wants it every week, and we'll probably start up in October or maybe November, just before the regular season gets underway. So we're looking forward to that.
And a lot of excitement in Mark's program. He's got a prolific scorer who's a local of sorts coming aboard in Crystal Davis from Arlington. He's got Kelly Vickers, who was probably as fine a freshman in the conference last year. You could get debate from Castleton people who, for Danielle Hunt, there was a lot of good freshmen last year, but certainly she was one of them. So excitement aplenty with CSJ women's basketball program.
forward
And,
to it.
I'm sure it's going to be a great show and a lot of interest in it.
And Mark has his camp coming up, by the way. Still not
That's
too
right.
late to sign up. It starts July 14th.
Okay, and right there at
At St.
CSJ,
Joe's,
in
at the new athletic
beautiful
complex.
new building, the Taj Mahal of the Mayflower. So that's exciting, and as we say goodbye here, I know you and I are both excited about the October 10th, the big event approaching, the one we've spent most of this 30 minutes talking about, the Shrine Maple Sugar
Or August
Bowl.
10th, you mean?
What did I say? April.
October. No, you said October. I'm going, boy, what's going on in October? I can't remember.
August 10th.
The Oktoberfest,
August 10th.
maybe. August 10th.
10th.
A month from today as we
That's right.
record the
Always
show.
the second Saturday in August.
And you mentioned 10-time writer of the year. You meant to say sportscaster. I wasn't going to correct
Boy,
you. You're the sports writer.
We'll have another 30 minutes on corrections here.
You're the sports writer of the year. That's
Okay, well, thanks very much, Jack, for stopping by, and we will see you at Memorial Field in Hanover on August
the 10th.
10th.